other game collectors out there, I got a question for you. Do you ever have the dilemma of choosing what game to play? Even if you have hundreds to choose from, I kinda have that dilemma myself, especially with the Nintendo GameCube collection. Now, I have over 150 games, and why is that? Well, at one point, I wanted to get the complete GameCube set. Now, collecting GameCube games honestly has become very popular over the years because, well, the Nintendo GameCube has become very popular over the years. Between many remasters and remakes from that era happening right now, prices and demand for games being so high recently, and Nintendo and other companies even still making the GameCube controller because of how popular it is, the GameCube is, needless to say, still very popular right now. Heck, people are really wanting Nintendo GameCube games to go to the Nintendo Switch Online service. Games like The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, Metroid Prime, Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, and Animal Crossing are just a few examples of some of the most beloved titles that Nintendo has to offer from the GameCube generation. But the GameCube hasn't always been looked upon this fondly. The Nintendo GameCube lost that generation by quite a healthy margin. The GameCube sold less than 22 million units, while the PlayStation 2 dominated that generation with over 150 million units. And even the original Xbox, a console that no one seems to talk about these days, sold 2 million consoles more than the Nintendo GameCube. So why is that the case? Well, there are a few reasons I can think of that the GameCube didn't sell that well, but there is one main culprit, and that culprit is the fact that games on the Nintendo GameCube came on these really small, weird little discs. The PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox used full-size DVDs, meaning that they had more options on what they could do with their consoles. On the original Xbox, you could also use it to play music CDs. However, to use it to watch movies, you had to buy additional adapters and other things to make it work. But with the PS2, you could play games, watch movies, play CDs, the whole shebang. At that time, that's all you really needed. No streaming services were available at that time. I mean, you could watch Netflix on it, but you'd have to wait a couple days for Netflix to mail the CDs out to you. Back then, having all those features packed into something so compact was really marketable. It made the PS2 the very obvious choice to buy and to be the winner of that generation. But that begs the question, what happened with the Nintendo GameCube? What was it like leading up to the console's launch? What were the launch titles? That's what we're going to dive into today. Before we talk about the games and how well the GameCube was received, let's talk about probably one of the most important things, the build-up all the way to the launch of the Nintendo GameCube. The Nintendo GameCube was initially shown off at Space World 2000, where it was revealed. There was no hands-on playtime with it from people, but this showcase showed off the console, the discs, the controllers, which changed a lot from then until launch, and they showed off tech demos for many Nintendo franchises. Pokemon, Wave Race, Legend of Zelda, Metroid, and one very different looking one that had Luigi inside a mansion filled with ghosts. Not too long ago, someone was actually able to nab HD footage of this showcase, and it was so cool to see all this stuff in crisp HD. The Nintendo GameCube wouldn't poke its head back into things until E3 the following year, with a proper reveal, an array of games to play, as well as a release date. At E3 2001, this was way before the days of Nintendo Directs, so Nintendo had a full-on conference for this thing. Watching it back, I'm glad they moved into the direction that they have. Because as much as I love the GameCube and even Luigi's Mansion, this press conference was tough to sit through, and it's over an hour long. This conference showed many things. Firstly, it revealed the Wavebird, which was Nintendo's wireless alternative to the normal GameCube controller. This controller is a beast, definitely one of the best controllers Nintendo has ever released. It also showed off many new games, fully revealing the spooky Luigi title as Luigi's Mansion, officially revealing Metroid Prime and Wave Race Blue Storm, and announcing titles like Donkey Kong Racing, Pikmin, Star Fox Adventures, Eternal Darkness, Animal Crossing, then known as Animal Forest, and Super Smash Bros. Melee. Even if the conference was a little bit long and boring, it still, by today's standards, is a pretty strong showcase, showing off a new Smash Brothers, a new Mario Kart, a new Zelda, a new Luigi IP, the new IP called Pikmin. Like, lots of these amazing games got shown off at this press conference, and by today's standards, if there's a presentation announcing all of that, it would have gone over really well, just without all the techno talk babble. They even had decent third-party announcements with a new Star Wars game, Cameo from Rareware, and NBA getting a game on the GameCube. Better yet, you could play many of them on the show floor, giving us better looks at games like Pikmin and Luigi's Mansion, which were games that people really didn't know what to expect. This show definitely gave Nintendo fans a lot to look forward to in terms of games. However, given that I was born in 1998, I was only 3 years old when this show happened, and I can't be a fair judge of how well received the show was. After all, Nintendo fans can be given the best show in the world, but still find things to complain about. If there's something I should do, is I should get someone's mindset who was actually at the show. Hearing the thoughts of someone who was there, got to see the show live, the unveiling, all the new games, in the room full of Nintendo fans' reactions, I gotta find someone who has that experience. And I think I might know just who. I know he's a very busy guy, so I hope he's able to answer.
Hey, Zach! What's up?
Hey, André, I got just a quick question for you. You were at the E3 where the Nintendo GameCube was officially revealed and showcased, correct?
Why, yeah. Yes, I was.
Okay, because I'm working on a video about that press conference, and I just got a couple questions for you. Firstly, what do you remember from that showcase, and what did you think of it?
I remember a surprising amount from Nintendo's E3 2001 press conference, from the hype and energy of waiting outside the auditorium to be let in, to the reveal of Super Smash Bros. Melee for the first time, seeing those gorgeous visuals on screen, to Miyamoto's on-stage demonstration of Luigi's Mansion, including the gameplay and the amazing lighting effects, to our first reveal of Pikmin the series, and seeing how well they brought together these more naturalistic visuals. And of course, they even had a Q&A afterward where we could ask Miyamoto and anyone else on stage questions about what we just saw. That was such a fun time, and really just the energy of it all, of this being a massive new generation for Nintendo, was so exciting, and I'll never forget the energy that went into the whole presentation. But I do think what stood out to me the most is just how much of a graphical upgrade everything was, how amazing these games all looked, where I think for the first time, like, the gap between the pre-rendered visuals to like real time was to a degree like so small that you almost couldn't perceive a difference. Now looking back, of course you can, but this felt like the first time that there wasn't really a huge gap between the two, to the point that even Smash Bros. Melee's reveal trailer had, you know, the opening cinematic, which is pre-rendered, mixed with real-time gameplay, and the two look so close together, you almost, like, the difference between the two didn't stand out, and that really is what stands out to me the most, I think, looking back, is, again, just how much of a leap this was over the 64, because this is a time when Nintendo still cared about having powerful, graphically capable hardware, and I appreciate now, looking back, just how much, you know, of a leap that really was, and how well these visuals hold up even today. I can go back to GameCube games, and yeah, they're, you know, arguably dated, but they don't feel old or archaic, and they still look really good. Like, after a few moments of playing them, you forget that these are 20-year-old games, and that is really one of the highest testaments, or one of the best testaments I can give to the GameCube, and being in that room at the time is seeing what felt like a massive leap for us in that era, to a degree that I don't think we'll ever see again, even from Nintendo, or especially from Nintendo perhaps. So yeah, that's probably one of my biggest takeaways, is just how good these games looked.
Alright, cool. And what was the audience reaction? Was it very hype? Was there a lot of skepticism?
You know, I don't remember a whole lot about the audience reaction, just because there was a lot going on, but I do remember the room completely losing it when Smash Bros. Melee was announced and revealed for the first time. I mean, consider this was a pretty new series. It was just released on 64 a couple years earlier, and here we have a brand new installment looking better than ever. It looks amazing, with brand new characters that really stepped up the crossover, you know, element of the game to a whole new degree, a whole new level, and that really was incredibly exciting. And I think that momentum carried throughout the entire presentation, but that was probably the peak. It's just hearing the room erupt over, you know, with emotion at seeing Smash Brothers in a way we'd never seen before, which was super, super exciting.
Alright, that makes sense. Now, last question. What did you play on the show floor?
What games did I play? You're probably better off asking what didn't I play, as if it was on the show floor, I probably played it. At the least, I definitely hit all the major Nintendo games multiple times, including Luigi's Mansion, Pikmin, Star Wars Rogue Leader, which was an amazing third-party showcase, Smash Bros. Melee, and even Wave Race Blue Storm, a game that's still underrated to this day. And let me tell you, being able to hold a GameCube controller for the first time, a controller that melted into your hand, and playing these games that looked futuristic, they looked better than anything I'd seen in my life, at least as it came to games, really all blew me away. It truly felt like a major leap for Nintendo. Again, as I think I said earlier, in an era when Nintendo still cared about delivering amazing visuals through hardware, like this really did feel like a quantum leap. And that is something I can't understate, especially with how well everything complemented each other. The controller to the gameplay to the graphics, that, you know, the gameplay at the least was augmented by, if not augmented the gameplay, the graphics of, you know, consider Luigi's Mansion. It's amazing lighting effects and how that plays into the gameplay. It all was, you know, perfect. And I do want to give a shout out to Smash Bros. Melee in particular, because they had these awesome like almost mini theaters scattered around the show floor, and if you walked in, you would see Smash Bros. On this massive screen where you could just grab a controller and play 4 players, and it was incredible. It felt so freaking fun and good, and I will never forget that feeling. What else was fun too was that these games actually changed to some degree by the time that they ended up releasing. In Smash Bros. Case, we were playing on the Great Bay stage. Again, a beautiful stage, particularly as we were able to compare it to, you know, Great Bay from Majora's Mask on the 64, and it looked way better. But one of the elements they added, or was different then, was the laboratory, you know, on the floating platform. You actually used to be able to enter it. You could run right through it, and that's not in the final game for whatever reason. Pikmin, they reversed the control, so in the sense that A and B work differently, where I think B would act as your throw ability, whereas A was the whistle, and I kind of missed that. I actually think I preferred that in the beta version. Luigi's Mansion, your vacuum could overheat if you used it too much, and it also had what appeared to be maybe a clock mechanic, if I remember correctly, suggesting some kind of time limit or real-time element at the least, and that was all really exciting, and I kind of missed both of those elements in the final game, even if I ended up loving all of those. And yeah, it was just kind of fun to see, you know, what changed from playing it on the show floor. But yeah, I really can't undersell how amazing it was to play the GameCube for the first time. It's definitely one of the most fun things I've ever experienced at E3, period, and it's an era I'll never forget. So yeah, super fun. I love seeing those games, and what a lineup! What a lineup! Like those, like at more modern E3s, it's rare that you have, you know, more than a couple of huge hitters, and here they had a whole lineup of amazing games, again, including Star Wars Rogue Leader, which wasn't first party, but it felt like it might have been, because I want to give a shout out to how good that game looked and how well it played, and especially with how it used the analog triggers, which again, another fantastic element of the GameCube controller that's largely been lost to time. So yeah, what an exciting time. I'll never forget that E3, such wonderful memories that, you know, we'll probably never see anything quite like that again.
Awesome. Thank you so much for answering these questions for me, Andre.
You're very welcome, Zach. But before we wrap it up here, Triss was mentioning something about you owing them some money.
Bye, Andre. You'd think that after a year, Triss would forget about the little amount of money that I owed them. Anyways, now we're going to talk about the launch of the GameCube system. Now, the GameCube launched with 12 games. Now, I only have about 7 of them. So, I'm going to be talking about all 7 of these games for you, but keep in mind, I'm not going to beat them all. I'm not going to sit through and play 100% through any of these games. I'm just going to be playing a little bit so you guys can get the general gist of them. Let's get them picked out, and let's get started. Alright, let's get some of the smaller games out of the way first, shall we? Let's start off with Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX 2. Alright, I am absolutely horrible at this game. In this game, you bike around doing tricks and gaining points from doing sick tricks and getting combos. What confuses me are pulling off the tricks. Maybe I need to spend more time with this game, but I couldn't really pull off anything crazy. There are many famous BMX riders to choose from in this game, including the titular Dave Mirra and all these other Slim Jim guy! A guy dressed as a Slim Jim! There is no way that is actually based off of a true, real person. He looks so ridiculous, but of course I'm gonna play as him. There are many modes that you can play. There's a free ride mode that is just that. You can ride around pulling off different tricks, and it's a good kind of way to just practice and mess around. There's also the Sessions mode. Here, kind of feels the same as the free ride, except it's timed and you can interact with other riders. Again, not a singular clue what I'm doing. I kept wiping out. Needless to say, BMX riding is not in my future. There's this cool park editor though, where you can create your own parks and ride your bike around in them. It's pretty cool, even if I couldn't tell what I was really putting down, but I link that to my lack of knowledge on BMX riding. In the same vein as Dave Mirra, we also have Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. I haven't played this one since I was like little. Let's give her a play. Well, it's got a free skate mode, a park editor, and a session mode, very much like Dave Mirra, except rather than pulling off sweet tricks with a BMX bike, you're pulling off sweet tricks with your skateboard. The one thing I will say about this game that I like over Dave Mirra is I feel like it's easier to control. Both moving around the level as well as pulling off the tricks were easier for me in this game, but I'm still not the greatest in this game. I'm a bit rusty with my skateboarding skills, but I still had a lot of fun with this one. Next up is Disney's Tarzan Untamed, a game based off the Disney movie that I've actually never played before. I believe this is supposed to be like a video game sequel to the Tarzan movie, like Aladdin and Azira's Revenge was to Aladdin. This game has three main types of gameplay that basically repeat. Firstly, there are the standard 3D platforming levels that really aren't anything special. Just work your way through the level and get to the end. Standard stuff. Then there are these surfing levels. This was a right pain in my ass. Here, you have to surf down this river to save this monkey, all while jumping, grinding on branches, and doing tricks. I'm already noticing a theme with some of these games. Except here, the controls are the worst. I had so much trouble not hitting obstacles. You'd think that you'd want to go quick, given that your little monkey friend is drowning, but doing that, you'll just bounce all over the place. Then, you have these water skiing levels, which are also very weird to control. It's really hard to explain how awkward it feels to me. This game is the first real stinker in the bunch. It's not a horrible game, but it's definitely not a game that I want to sit and play the full thing of. Let's send this sucker back to the jungle where it belongs. Next up is Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2 Rogue Leader. Oh yeah, now this is fun. Flying around fan favorite locations like Tatooine and the Death Star. Honestly though, I'm not a big Star Wars fan. I've only seen the films once, so my knowledge on the source material is very minimal. But I feel like if you're a fan of Star Wars, this game is going to be the game for you. I can tell there are loads of Easter eggs and references to the movies, so if you are a die-hard Star Wars fan, I feel like I can really highly recommend this game. Super Monkey Ball is next, and this one is a classic. Simple concept: monkey in ball, monkey need to get to goal. The gameplay is one of those easy to learn, hard to master kind of games. At first glance, it looks like you're rolling a ball around a course to get to the end, but that actually isn't the case. You're actually tilting the level, and your monkey ball rolls based on whichever way you tilt the level. Just imagine you're holding a tray and tilting it, and you're rolling the ball around. Like I said, it's a game that's easy to learn, but hard to completely master. It's not a game you'll sit and devote hours to, but it's a great pick up and play kind of game. Now we're in Nintendo's first party lineup, and there's actually two games here to talk about. Let's start off with Wave Race Blue Storm. Wave Race Blue Storm is a racing game where you ride on jet skis and race along a track against 7 other opponents. Being honest, this was my first time actually playing this one, so naturally I sucked really badly at it. I had a hard time grasping the controls, specifically the turning. There are many different racers to choose from in this game, like, ooh, Akari. Wow, she's a hottie. It sucks that I'm so bad at this game though. I'm really not doing Akari any favors. Sorry, baby cakes. I won the first few races, but once the tide began to get higher, I knew it was all over. Even though I sucked at this one, I actually did have fun with it. I just need a little more time with it. Then the last launch title is My Baby. This game is my absolute favorite, and I really mean it. Many of you already know this, of course, but for those of you who are new, Luigi's Mansion is a game where you're playing as Luigi, Mario's scaredy cat brother, and you are exploring this big haunted mansion, all to find Mario while capturing ghosts with the Poltergust 3000. I could do a whole video dedicated on this game, as I have done many times on other occasions. All you need to know is that this is a great game, with lots of charm and many spooks to be had. So there you have it, the GameCube launch lineup. Now, it's honestly not that horrible of a lineup, and like I said, I have nowhere near all the games. I think there's about 6 that I don't have, but it is definitely one of Nintendo's weaker showings because the only first-party titles they had were Luigi's Mansion and Wave Race. Nothing really extravagant, no 3D Zelda, no 3D Mario, and many people were expecting more. But I will give Nintendo the benefit of the doubt because the GameCube came out in the later part of the year, you know, towards the second half, I think in like September-ish in Japan and November in the US. And not long after the GameCube's launch, they actually did have 2 heavier-hitting titles release, you know, in that very same year. So these are basically close to launch lineup titles. Let's start off with one that came out not long after the GameCube launched, being Pikmin. This odd little game is all about taking control of Captain Olimar as he is trying to recover pieces of his ship that he lost after crashing onto this strange planet. He finds these little plant creatures, which he calls Pikmin, and he needs to use them to gather the resources he needs to explore the planet, as well as gather the parts to his ship. Honestly, this is a really cute game. It's not necessarily a game built for me, but it is a good one for those of you who like quirky different games about exploration and resource management. Pikmin might now be a very notable series, but remember, this was the first title that came out for the series back then, so it still wasn't a heavy hitter for Nintendo to showcase their new console. There was one game, though, that came out that year that was something many Nintendo fans were waiting for, and that was Super Smash Bros. Melee. This game is such a great multiplayer game. It's a perfect follow-up to the Nintendo 64 original and improves upon it in basically every single way. The character roster is much more expansive, the stages are great, and it definitely holds up even to this day. The GameCube controller really shines with this game, so much so that even modern Smash games have the GameCube controller as a controller option simply because of its popularity. This game came out near the holidays, making it the perfect game to gather around the TV with your friends and family with to play for many hours of memories. After Super Smash Bros. Melee, the rest is history. We all know how the GameCube turned out. There were many titles that were released, like Super Mario Sunshine, which is a game I already talked about, but the legacy of the GameCube, as everyone knows, is that the GameCube as a console in its generation failed for many of the reasons I stated earlier, which is very unfortunate. But nowadays, its legacy is huge. Many people, particularly the people who grew up with it, have many fond memories of it and are very much fighting for the GameCube to be relevant today, and including collectors. Many people have collected for the Nintendo GameCube. My friend Dan actually got a complete Nintendo GameCube set at one point. I wonder how he did it. I wonder how he's doing.
Rebel Gaming Club, worst pickup. No, this isn't a pickup. This is me talking about the GameCube. My name's Dan. I'm from the Rebel Gaming Club. Well, Rebel Rock Records and more now. But we're here to talk about the GameCube. I am someone who actually collected a whole set of GameCube games. And I had a full set until about 3 months ago when I decided I pretty much had enough. There's a lot of games in the collection, and unfortunately a lot of the games were either geared towards younger children, which, you know, I don't necessarily need, or there were games that I had on other systems, like Resident Evil 4, which I had on the PS2. So I decided to sell my Steelbook for $100 on the GameCube. You know, the red one, the GameStop exclusive. I got rid of it. I felt fine about it. But I thought we'd talk for the next 2 minutes or so about how it all started. GameCube was a system I've loved from pretty much day one. I play music and we used, live in punk rock band houses, and we'd always have the system hooked up playing four player, Double Dash, Super Monkey Ball, stuff like that. So the system it was near and dear. Let's rewind. 8 years ago, I start getting back into collecting. And at that point, I don't know, I had a collection of probably about 50 GameCube games. It was all the stuff that I really loved and I actually played. And one day I was out thrifting in my area, and I came across, like, I don't know, 15 games. And they were all heavy hitters, like Skies of Arcadia. And that pretty much spawned it on. I was like, okay, I think we can do this. And now we're talking 8 years ago, 7-8 years ago, when prices were, they were expensive, but it's not like it is now. And when we talk about prices, so I went to the flea market 8 years ago, and we found Ribbit King, which is an expensive game, but you can see I paid $18 for it. And then you got a game like Go-Go Hyper Grind, which is a very odd Atlas title. How much did I pay for it? $23. And I got really lucky back in the day too. Off Amazon, I found this for like $15 on Amazon. So at that time, people were just kind of getting rid of a lot of their GameCube stuff. They didn't care about it. I always kind of did and knew it was going to kind of come around, and it sure did. And then you had games like Disney Sports Basketball, which was a hard one to track down. You got to make the decision. Do you want the manual? I didn't care about the manual on big games like that. I was fine. And then you got to get lucky when you got like a gotcha force. You got to hope to find a buddy, which I made friends online, and we made a trade, and he was kind enough to part with it. So a lot of luck comes into play. The last game I found for the system was this Rally Championship, which was a nightmare to find. And once again, it's missing the manual, but I was okay with that. And then I had my cousin hooked it up. We got this NCAA 2K3. So for you guys, if you're out there trying to collect, I would say network, make friends with as many people as possible. Be willing to trade some of your other retro games towards that, because I had to. I parted with a lot of N64 stuff. Like I said, now I think I probably have 375 GameCube games. It's all the stuff that I like or want to like eventually, because I haven't played the whole collection. That would take a lot of time. I ain't got that kind of time. But that's me talking some GameCube with you guys. Thank you, ZakPak, for having me. Back to you, sir.
Well, anyways, I actually also tried GameCube collecting. I only made it about 1/3 of the way through the GameCube set before giving up, because it's just too expensive. It's a very expensive console to collect for, given that it didn't sell well and a lot of titles are harder to come across. But, you guys, I gotta get going. I actually have a party happening next week, and I am inviting lots of my friends over, and it's gonna be a good time. But it's not just any party I'm going to be throwing. It's gonna be a Mario party.